talking to us from Los Angeles, California is Colin Scully, who directed the short film Finding Ambrosia that played at our film festival last month. How's it going, Colin?
Going well. How you doing, Matthew?
Okay, so your film got a lot of polarizing responses. What was your reaction to the feedback you received from the festival We did the festival last week.
Well, I have to say, it's been a year since we finished the film, and a year gives you a lot of hindsight.
Sure.
So when I'm looking at some of the feedback, I can say, some of the criticism I can relate to and understand. Some of it I personally disagree with, but I respect. I knew going into it that it was going to be an incredibly polarizing movie. It was actually rejected by my university when I applied to make it. We had to go make it ourselves because the professors did not think it was a good story. I didn't believe that. I still don't believe that. So we chose to go out and do it anyway. But I have to say again, it's been. I learned a lot making that film. I've learned a lot since I made that film, so I can understand kind of some of the audience reaction to it. And it was nice, to be honest, to see normal people just give their critiques. I mean, I have shown it to plenty of people. When you show it to people close to you, it is harder to get real, honest criticism. You know what I mean?
Sure, of course.
Yeah. So I'd say I embraced it, and I've watched the feedback video a couple times, and it's
people there's nobody in the audience who has any emotional connection to you or anybody involved with the film. So what they're saying is what they feel and what they're honest about, right?
Exactly. Yeah, and that's incredibly important as a young filmmaker who is trying to learn kind of how do I connect with the masses, and that's what I want to do. I want to make films that can connect with large amounts of people. I don't just want to make movies for myself. I want to make films that others can relate to and others can appreciate and embrace.
Okay, so basically, for my reaction to this film is that it's like I saw it before the festival, and it's either you have to get into the film, or if you don't get into the film the first 2 minutes, then you're not into this film. Does that make sense? So that's how I think that's where some of the criticisms came from, where they just didn't enter the, you know what I mean? Like emotionally, you watch it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. There is, and I'd say this probably reflects my filmmaking style even today. There is something about the control and release of information that I'm very fascinated with, and I love mystery. And there is a difficult and delicate balance. How much can you reveal to keep the audience engaged? Some of these audience members at your film festival did not feel like they knew what was going on early enough and thus could not be engaged, and that's a valid criticism. This was one of my first attempts at trying that. And it's something I take into consideration when I've written, future screenplays and stories. How do I keep a sense of mystery alive, but keep the audience engaged and on board? You got to feed them a little bit so they can understand before going to the next point, the next part of the journey.
Exactly. But and then also too, you have this film has no dialogue in it as well, like 15-minute film, no dialogue.
Yes. That was it started out as a personal challenge. I wanted to see if I could just tell a visual story, and I'm still very proud of that, and I'll defend that. I wanted to tell, my DP in our Kickstarter once said, the camera has to speak for these characters. There is no dialogue, and I wanted to tell a purely visual, motion picture, where people can just watch the film and get lost in it. They don't have dialogue to interpret. They can just interpret the visual in any which way they want. And it's not something that I want to stick with. In fact, the next screenplay I wrote, which I actually ultimately abandoned, but the next screenplay I wrote was written the complete opposite. I wanted to write a film with a ton of dialogue to try and see if I could do that. But I think I found that I really do like the visual storytelling, and I really do like watching things unfold without dialogue, and just let the audience kind of interpret for themselves what's going on, and be able to have room to think in their head kind of what they think the characters are doing and whatnot.
And in this particular film, it's like there's some scientific, like they called it the bowl punch. Like we have to leap.
Yeah, I saw that. Well, what about the bowl?
No. What I'm trying to say is that it's like I'm just using it as an example of like we as an audience need to leap into like has relevance to it besides being a bowl punch.
Yeah, exactly. And I found that some of the audience members did kind of understand and embrace what it was. It was this elixir keeping him alive, and that's what you got to do. You have to just embrace it. And I realized that I'm, asking a lot. Not necessarily everyone's going to be on board with that. Again, it's something, that's a perfect example of something that I did in this film that I want to watch out for the next one. What am I trying to say, and how do I get the audience to understand that?
So this is a film that's done on the Kickstarter campaign, which seems to be very popular, especially in the last year. So tell us, like, people don't know, like, how did you get this film made? How did you get the funding for this film?
Well, like I said, my school would not support it. So a lot of the money went from myself, from my loving and wonderful parents who helped me out. We were able to shoot the movie, and then when we went to the post process, there were a lot of stuff. There was, a lot of color correction, a lot of visual effects, some sound work, some music, stuff that we realized we just didn't have the funds for. And this was the first film that I produced, and I realized when I produced this film that I do not want to be a producer because I completely mismanaged it, I think. So we found ourselves in a little bit of a black hole in terms of where do we get the rest of this financing. I think we just missed. Kickstarter has exploded in the past year, and not necessarily in a good way. You're seeing all of this criticism towards people like Zach Braff and Spike Lee, and I know James Franco did an Indiegogo that was not very successful, in my understanding, and it made people a little more wary of Kickstarter. I think we just missed that, and we're on the cusp of Kickstarter is still this new exciting thing for independent filmmakers and creators.
Not for like Sylvester Stallone, who needs $500,000 to finish his financing to go after, right?
And that's not to say that Kickstarter is no longer a valid entry, but if I were to do Kickstarter again, I would approach it very differently. First off, I would make sure I would gather a following and gather awareness before Kickstarter, and before just diving in at first. We were lucky. I think some people, I got many messages from complete strangers who contributed a lot of money, who were just fascinated by the product. I don't know if that would happen again today. It's not something I want to try. I don't want to go to Kickstarter again to ask for money. But it was pretty fascinating and surprising to me how quickly the positive reaction on Kickstarter was.
And it helped you finish. It helped you finish your film, and which is
it helped us film, and it helped us fund all the festival submissions. Which I stopped submitting to festivals when the funds dried out, which took about 6 months or so. But it was great. We were able to submit it to about 20 or so. We got into 6, I believe, which I think is a good.
That's a great ratio.
Number. Yeah, I agree. Again, this was the first big project that I undertook just coming out of school, and I learned so much. I have no regrets about any of the process because even the stumbles, I know now for next time what to do right. And myself and my friends and the people that helped work on it, we all grew from it. We're all better for it. We're all better filmmakers.
So what's next for you? Then you're 100% right. So what's next? What's next for you? What are you up to now?
Well, right now, my day job is I'm employed at Lightstorm Entertainment, which is James Cameron's production company. I'm kind of fell into the visual effects side of things. I'm assisting them on the production of the Avatar sequels, which has been outstanding. I've been there for about a year, and it's long and it's grueling, and I hear that once wrote a screenplay before, a short. About 3 months into it, I ultimately just kind of abandoned it. I said, this is not going to work. So I've switched gears. I'm working on a feature. It's I like to call it a character study in vein of J-horror. I'm very into Japanese horror, and I wanted to write a horror film, and again, it's small budget and stuff. So I tried a bit of a different approach this time. I haven't dived right to the actual screenplay, but I'm just doing these really, really intense outlines. So, pulling lots of visual references, writing, I'm writing a treatment that's up the page like 30 or so right now, and my hope is when I sit down to write the screenplay, it's going to outline so thoroughly that my first draft I can just kind of pound through, and then sit back and say, okay, what next? And I don't really have a timetable for when we shoot it. It's just, like we did with Finding Ambrosia. It got to the point in Finding Ambrosia we were like, okay, we just need to shoot this.
Yeah.
And now it's just going to be when we're ready. And I'm an incredibly slow writer. I'll be the first to raise my hand and do that. I get distracted easily. I get frustrated. But what keeps me going is I just love the outcome. I love being able to look at a finished piece, or I love it when an idea hits me that I can get excited about, and that's what keeps me going.
What's the biggest thing you've learned working for James Cameron's company and the Avatar sequel?
There is no room for BS at all. Even under pressure, you gotta if you mess up, you gotta stand up and say I messed up, and that is the best thing for you. And it takes a lot of hard work, and I have found that everyone there is very patient as long as you keep making new mistakes. They have no patience for repeated mistakes.
Yeah.
As long as you make new mistakes, if you're learning, that's okay. And it was difficult for me to, being young, I was thinking I am terrified that I'm going to get removed at any moment, so I need to create this illusion of I'm doing everything right. That fell apart immediately. These guys are all older and smarter than me, and they've done this for decades. But they had the patience and understanding to kind of teach me, no, you've got to just keep making new mistakes. You've got to be the one to stand up and say, I screwed up. This is what I'm going to do to fix it. And I've since embraced that, and it's been great. It's been a lot of work. It's been a lot of 12 and 14-hour days, but it's been a lot of fun since then. And it's something that I'm really going to take into consideration when I do my next personal piece.
Well, Colin, congratulations for your film, and everybody, like you said, one of the comments is that everybody likes a time travel movie, everybody likes romance, and that's what you gave us, and congrats again, and looking forward to seeing your next film down the line.
Thanks a lot, man. I appreciate it, man.